Hey kids, in today's video we are going to go over something that should be easy but took me a sec to figure out. Centering a gallery on a screen. Let's go. So I should preface by saying that this isn't simply about centering a gallery. This is a problem that I've had to deal with in other apps because the galleries I am trying to center have dynamic entries in it. So, for example, I use galleries on my home screen as more of a central navigation. And oftentimes the elements in that navigation are dependent upon the role of the current user. So it'll vary from user to user. So I may have, 3 elements in one display of the gallery up to 7 or 8 in another. And so the aesthetics in me are always bothered by the fact that I can't center these items within the gallery. And so I had to find a way around that. It finally bothered me, and I wanted a solution. And it turns out the solution, goes back to before Power Apps even existed, at least for me. Back in, I'm not going to say when, but I used to be a Visual Basic programmer, and before the center on screen function was something, you used to have to actually write a formula to center a window on the screen, especially when it first loaded. And that's what hit me that might work, and spoiler alert, does, for this particular scenario. So let's take a look at what it is we're trying to do. Let's go ahead and build it. So I wanted to show you the final version of the application before we go ahead and build it, just so you can have an understanding of what it is I'm trying to put together here today. So we see here we have, in this case, a simple navigation, could be a navigation, across the top of our screen. And now the idea is that the elements in this navigation will vary. So to avoid having to do roles and logging in and logging out, I just built a quick slider that will have the number of elements shown in the navigation. So as we slide it, you see here that they disappear, but the elements come and go, but the overall gallery remains centered on the screen. So you could do this as a header within the screen. You could do this as the main focus of the screen, centering the overall navigation like I mentioned in the introduction. So that's what we're going to try and build. And of course we're using a gallery, and the slider here just something we can put together to easily test this particular piece of functionality. Now, quick idea of what we're starting with here. The data is not overly complicated. I have set 2 things, one collection, one variable. The variable is just simply the template width of the gallery template. Now we're going to do a horizontal gallery in this. I guess you could change this to a vertical if you wanted to center it top to bottom. These techniques will work just the same. You just, of course, change your X and your Y. The other is the collection, and that's just some data that we could show. You see here I have some colors in a display order. So it's not overly complicated stuff. So if we go from our done screen to our to-do screen, as mentioned, the first thing we want to do is go ahead and get a blank horizontal gallery. And we will tie it to our collection. All right, so we're just going to go ahead and stretch that out. Now the first thing I want to do is go ahead and set our template size from the default to our variable. So we have our template width. And now we're going to go ahead and put some data in that. And now we're just going to drag in a text label. You see we have our colors. And we're going to change our height to roughly fit it. Now we're going to do a little aesthetics here. We're going to make it bold. And the fill for this is going to be that color value, just so we can get a good visual. So this item.color. So you can see now we have our gallery in a very simplistic way. Now the gallery is In this case, I don't care how wide it is because we're going to set that programmatically. So we're going to come in here and the overall width, we're going to do some math. And what we want to do is set the width to a value based on the number of items. So we want to make sure the gallery is as condensed as possible. So to do that, we're going to have to take our template width variable and multiply it by the number of items we have. So of course we're going to do, there's a slight trick to it because we will also need to take in the template padding value as well. So if we do our template width plus our, what did I name it? Gallery 2. Template padding. Ooh, where'd you go? There we are. Times the number of items. Gallery 2 dot all items. Now, of course, we got to count rows that. So our width is now set based on the items. Now, in this particular case, I do not care about the scroll bars. Let me move myself for a second. So we get rid of the scroll bar. Now you see here we're cut off a little bit. Now you can adjust the padding, or you can just do a quick ×2. That gives you a little extra padding. Some adjustment is needed, but we want this to be as condensed as we possibly can. So for this example, that little bit of extra, you can decide if it's okay. Here we see, we're not really cut off by leaving it at 1. You decide based on the padding you want in between your elements. So now we need to center this. And the centering is really not centering the item in a traditional sense, in that the gallery, of course, as we see in our properties, does not have a center function. So we're going to have to do this the old-fashioned way. And what we're going to do is set the X position of the gallery based on the width. So as mentioned before in Visual Basic way back in the day, you had to do a little bit of math and nothing too terribly bad. But what we're going to want to do is we're going to take the difference between the screen width and our gallery width and simply divide that by 2. So we're going to come in here. We have our app.width minus gallery2.width divided by 2. And that will have this always be a dynamic placement for our X edge, and that gives us our center value. And that's really the trick. Now if we wanted to prove it, we can go to our input and get a slider value. Drop that in here. Of course, we can center that. And on this slider, we can have, let's see, we want our max set to gallery 2 dot, again, count the rows. So we have our max. And just for the sake of completeness, I'm going to let that be the default as well. So that's going to slide based upon the number of items that we have. And finally, we want to come into our gallery. To prove that it works, we're going to go ahead and tie the slider to our items real quick. So we're going to filter, and I use the display order, but it's a number, and that'll tie in neatly with the slider. Slider 2.value, boom. We hit play, and we can see that our gallery remains centered regardless of the number of items. So that's it. It's a quick video this week, but I just wanted to go ahead and put this concept out there as I found it useful. Hopefully you will too. Thanks, kids. Have a good one.